The blue glow of the laptop screen lit up my dark office as I scrolled through Adrian's private messages at 2:47 a.m. What I saw there made my blood freeze in my veins. My husband of 8 years, the man I had built an empire with, was planning to destroy me. She's become dead weight, Rebecca. Zara thinks she's untouchable because we're married, but I need someone hungry and ambitious beside me, not some comfortable wife who's lost her edge. Rebecca's reply made me sick. Once you fire her, we can finally be together openly. I can't wait to take over her position and show everyone what real talent looks like. Your wife is living in the past, I'm your future, baby. Adrian's response was the nail in my coffin. Tomorrow I'm calling the board meeting. I'll make up some story about her performance declining and recommend you as the new head of technology. By Friday she'll be gone and you'll be moving into our house. I already have the divorce papers ready. I sat there in the empty office building, my hands shaking as I read message after message. They had been planning this for 6 months. 6 months of lies, fake smiles, and betrayal. Adrian had been coming home to me every night, kissing me, telling me he loved me, while plotting to replace me with his 28-year-old mistress. The worst part wasn't even the affair. It was how they talked about me like I was nothing. Like the woman who had coded the very foundations of Cole Technologies, who had worked 18-hour days to build this company from nothing, was just some burden to be discarded. She'll probably cry and beg, Rebecca had written. Women like her always do when they realize they're not special anymore. Adrian's reply, let her cry. By the time I'm done, everyone will see that you're the real brains behind our success. I'll make sure she can't find work anywhere in the tech industry. She'll be finished. I closed the laptop and walked to the massive windows overlooking the city. Below me, millions of lights twinkled in the darkness. This building, this empire, this life, I had helped create all of it. I had sacrificed my own dreams, my own company ideas, to be Adrian's perfect wife and business partner. But they had made one critical mistake. They thought I was weak. They thought I would cry and beg and disappear quietly into the night. They had no idea what I was really capable of. I walked back to my computer and began typing. Not angry, frantic typing, calm, methodical strokes. I had work to do. If Adrian wanted to see what real talent looked like, I would show him. If he wanted to destroy my reputation and leave me with nothing, he would learn that the woman who built his digital empire could also burn it to the ground. The first thing I did was copy every single message, document, and file from his private accounts. Then I started looking deeper. In 8 years of marriage and partnership, Adrian had shared everything with me: passwords, access codes, business secrets. He trusted me completely, and that trust was about to become his downfall. I found his tax documents showing massive offshore accounts he'd been hiding from the IRS. I found emails with clients where he was wildly inflating our capabilities and lying about project timelines. I found evidence of him stealing ideas from smaller companies and rebranding them as Cole Technologies innovations. But the real treasure was in the system architecture. Every major program, every security protocol, every piece of critical infrastructure, I had designed it all. And I had been smart enough to build myself secret backdoors into everything. Not for malicious purposes back then, just as a precaution in case we ever needed emergency access. Now those backdoors were going to serve a very different purpose. I spent the rest of the night creating my battle plan. Adrian thought he was playing chess, but he was about to discover that I had been playing 3D chess while he was still learning to move the pieces. By sunrise, I had everything I needed. Evidence, access, and most importantly, a plan that would destroy not just Adrian's company but his reputation, his fortune, and his freedom. I gathered my things and headed home, where my loving husband was probably sleeping peacefully next to his phone full of messages from his mistress. I walked into our bedroom and watched him for a moment. This man who had promised to love and honor me, who had sworn we were partners in everything. "Good morning, beautiful," he said when his eyes opened, giving me that charming smile that had fooled me for so long. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I said, and it wasn't a lie. "I think I'm getting sick." He sat up looking concerned. The caring husband act was so perfect, so practiced. "Maybe you should stay home today. I can handle the morning meetings." "No," I said, managing a weak smile. "I'll be fine. We have that big presentation with the Henderson Group, remember? I wouldn't miss that." What I didn't tell him was that the Henderson Group presentation would be the last time he ever saw me in that office as his wife and partner. After today, everything would change. He kissed my forehead and headed to the shower, humming happily. He had no idea that his perfect plan was about to become his perfect nightmare. I made coffee and toast, playing the role of the loving wife one last time. But inside I was already gone. The woman who had loved and trusted Adrian Cole was dead. In her place stood someone much more dangerous, someone with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. As I watched him eat breakfast and check his phone for messages from Rebecca, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered his words, "Let her cry. She'll be finished. We'll see about that, Adrian. We'll see who finishes who." I walked into Cole Technologies that morning like it was any other day. I smiled at the receptionist, grabbed my usual coffee from the break room, and settled into my office to begin the most important performance of my life. Adrian was already in meetings, probably coordinating with Rebecca about my upcoming firing. I could see her through the glass walls of the conference room, leaning a little too close to my husband, her hand occasionally touching his arm. She was pretty, I had to admit, blonde, tall, with the kind of aggressive ambition that looked appealing until you realized it was built on stepping over other people. The first thing I did was start documenting everything. I needed a complete record of my contributions to every project, every innovation, every line of code that had built this company. If Adrian was going to try to erase my legacy, I would make sure the truth was preserved. Then I began implementing my insurance policies. Every major system in Cole Technologies ran through servers that I had personally configured. Over the years, I had built what I called maintenance tunnels, hidden pathways that would let me access any part of our network for troubleshooting and updates. Adrian knew they existed in theory, but he had never bothered to learn the technical details. He trusted me to handle all of that. That trust was about to cost him everything. I spent the morning writing what appeared to be routine security updates. To anyone looking at the code, they were standard maintenance patches. But buried deep in the programming were my real additions, tiny programs that would lay dormant until activated, then give me complete control over every aspect of the company's digital infrastructure. "Working hard, I see," said a voice behind me. I turned to find Rebecca standing in my doorway, holding a coffee cup and wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Always," I replied pleasantly. "Just updating our security protocols. Can never be too careful in our business." She stepped into my office uninvited and perched on the edge of my desk. "I've been thinking we should collaborate more. I have some ideas about streamlining our technology department." The audacity was breathtaking. She was already planning how to reorganize my department before she even officially had my job. "That sounds interesting," I said, typing calmly. "What kind of streamlining did you have in mind?" "Well, I think we have too many redundant positions. Some people who might have been necessary in the early days but aren't really contributing at their full potential anymore." She took a sip of her coffee, watching me carefully. I knew what she was doing. She was fishing, trying to see if I suspected anything, maybe hoping I would get upset or defensive. Instead, I gave her my brightest smile. "You're absolutely right. Dead weight is so harmful to a growing company. I'm sure Adrian appreciates having someone around who can spot that kind of problem." For just a moment, her confident mask slipped. She hadn't expected me to agree with her. "Exactly," she said, recovering quickly. "Adrian values people who aren't afraid to make tough decisions." After she left, I continued my work. I accessed Adrian's computer remotely and began copying files. All of his financial records, business communications, personal emails, everything. I also planted tiny monitoring programs that would record every keystroke, every email, every file he accessed. By lunchtime, I had built a complete surveillance network throughout the entire company. Every computer, every server, every communication device was now sending me copies of everything. If Adrian was going to destroy me, I was going to document every moment of his betrayal. I ate lunch alone in my office, watching through the glass walls as Adrian and Rebecca shared a meal in the executive dining room. They sat close together, talking intensely, occasionally glancing toward my office. Planning my downfall, no doubt. My phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. "Board meeting at 3 p.m. Need you there to discuss the Q4 technology roadmap." I knew what this really meant. This was the meeting where he would announce my firing and Rebecca's promotion. The Q4 roadmap was just an excuse to get me in front of everyone so he could humiliate me publicly. I spent the afternoon making final preparations. I created encrypted copies of every important file and stored them in hidden locations across the internet. I set up anonymous email accounts and secure communication channels. Most importantly, I activated all of my dormant programs and ran extensive tests to make sure everything worked perfectly. By 2:45 p.m. I was ready for war. I walked into the boardroom with a smile, carrying my laptop and a folder full of legitimate technology proposals. The board members were already there, 12 executives who had watched me help build this company from nothing. They respected me, trusted my judgment, valued my expertise. They had no idea they were about to witness my execution. Adrian called the meeting to order and began with routine business updates. Then he smiled at the group and said, "Before we discuss the Q4 roadmap, I have an important announcement about our technology leadership." Here it comes, I thought, keeping my expression neutral and attentive. As our company continues to grow, we need leadership that can adapt to new challenges and opportunities. After careful consideration, I've decided to make some changes to our technology department structure. Several board members glanced at me with slight frowns. They could sense something was wrong. Effective immediately, Rebecca Hayes will be taking over as our new head of technology. Her fresh perspective and innovative approach will help us reach the next level of success. The room fell silent. I could see the shock and confusion on everyone's faces. 3 board members actually looked angry. "Adrian," said Jennifer Walsh, our longest-serving board member, "what about Zara? She built our entire technology infrastructure." "Zara has done good work in the past," Adrian replied smoothly, "but her performance has been declining recently. She's become resistant to new ideas and stuck in outdated methodologies. It's time for fresh blood." I sat there calmly, letting him dig his own grave with every word. "That's ridiculous," snapped Robert Chin from accounting. "Zara's department has exceeded every target for 3 years running." "Nevertheless," Adrian continued, his voice getting harder, "the decision has been made. Zara will be transitioning out of the company over the next 2 weeks. Finally I spoke. "I understand completely, Adrian. You have to do what's best for the company." Everyone stared at me in shock. They had expected me to fight, to argue, to defend myself. Instead, I was graciously accepting my own professional execution. "I'm glad you're being professional about this," Adrian said, looking slightly surprised but pleased. "Of course," I smiled. "I would never want to hold back Cole Technology's success. When do you need me to finish the transition?" And that was when I saw the first flicker of doubt in his eyes. This was too easy. I was being too cooperative. But he couldn't back down now, not in front of the entire board. "2 weeks should be sufficient," he said. "Perfect. I'll make sure Rebecca has everything she needs to succeed." What I didn't tell anyone in that room was that I had just activated the final phase of my preparation. While Adrian was announcing my firing, hidden programs throughout the company's network were already beginning their work. The real show was about to begin. The next morning, I arrived at Cole Technologies knowing it would be my last day as Mrs. Adrian Cole, respected partner and technology leader. But I wasn't ready for the level of public humiliation Adrian had planned. "Good morning, Zara," said Patricia from HR, appearing at my office door at exactly 9 a.m. Behind her stood 2 security guards and Rebecca, who was carrying a box of office supplies. "We need to expedite your transition," Patricia continued awkwardly. "Adrian has decided that 2 weeks might create confusion about leadership roles." Translation: They wanted me gone immediately so Rebecca could take over without any awkward questions about qualifications or experience. "I understand," I said, beginning to pack my personal items. "Should I finish documenting the Henderson project handover first?" "That won't be necessary," Rebecca interjected, setting her box down on my desk like she already owned it. "I've been briefed on all current projects." The security guards stood there looking uncomfortable. They knew me, had worked with me for years, and clearly didn't understand why they were being asked to escort me out like a criminal. "Mrs. Cole," one of them said quietly, "we're sorry about this." "It's okay, Tony. Just doing your job." Word had spread quickly through the office. As I packed my belongings, employees kept walking by my office, staring in shock. Many of them owed their jobs to me. I had hired them, trained them, fought for their promotions and raises. Now they were watching me get thrown out like garbage. Adrian appeared in my doorway, flanked by 3 board members who looked deeply uncomfortable. "Zara, I hope you understand this is purely a business decision," he said loud enough for everyone in the nearby cubicles to hear. "Your contributions to the company have been adequate, but we need leadership that can take us to the next level." Adequate. 8 years of 18-hour days, of sacrificing my own dreams to build his empire, of being the technical genius behind every major breakthrough this company had achieved, and he called it adequate. "Of course, Adrian," I replied serenely. "I want what's best for Cole Technologies." He looked frustrated by my calm response. He had wanted me to break down, to cry, to beg. Instead, I was maintaining perfect dignity while he looked like a heartless tyrant in front of his own employees. "Rebecca will be taking over immediately," he continued. "She'll need access to all of your files, passwords, and system documentation." This was the moment I had been preparing for. I handed Rebecca a USB drive containing what appeared to be complete system documentation and access codes. What she actually received was a carefully crafted collection of false information, obsolete passwords, and programs designed to fail at critical moments. "Everything you need is on there," I said with a helpful smile. "The real passwords are in the encrypted files. The decryption key is New Beginnings 2024. Rebecca practically snatched the drive from my hand. "Thank you. I'm sure I'll be in touch if I need any clarification." "Actually," Adrian said, "we think it's better if there's a clean break. No contact with former employees about company business. Helps everyone move forward." In other words, he wanted to make sure I couldn't expose Rebecca's incompetence when she inevitably failed to understand systems that had taken me years to develop. I finished packing while they watched. Family photos, a few books, my favorite coffee mug, my small succulent plant. 8 years of my life reduced to a single cardboard box. As I walked through the office toward the elevator, employees lined up along the corridor. Some looked angry, some looked sad, but all of them looked shocked. Sarah from accounting was actually crying. "This is wrong," she whispered as I passed. "Take care of yourself, Sarah," I replied. "And remember what I taught you about backing up your work." The elevator ride down felt eternal. 2 security guards, my cardboard box, and the weight of 8 years ending in betrayal. When we reached the lobby, I could see more employees pressed against the windows above, watching my departure. Adrian and Rebecca were probably already in my office going through my files, planning how to take credit for my work. They thought they had won. They thought they had successfully erased me from Cole Technologies. They had no idea that I had just handed Rebecca a digital time bomb. The USB drive I gave her contained realistic-looking documentation that would work perfectly for about 2 weeks. Long enough for everyone to think the transition was going smoothly, long enough for Adrian to look like he had made a smart decision. Then, gradually, systems would start failing. Programs would crash at the worst possible moments. Security protocols would malfunction during client presentations. And Rebecca, with no real technical background beyond basic marketing databases, would have no idea how to fix any of it. I drove home to the house I had shared with Adrian for 5 years. The house where we had planned our future, where we had celebrated every business success, where I had trusted him completely. Walking through those rooms felt like visiting a museum of my former life. I went to his home office and sat at the desk where he had probably drafted my termination paperwork. His computer was still logged in. He never worried about security at home because he trusted his wife completely. I spent 2 hours copying every file from his personal computer. Financial records, personal emails, business communications, photos, documents, everything. Then I installed monitoring software that would forward copies of all his future digital activity to secure accounts I had created. If Adrian wanted to destroy me, I was going to document every moment of his own downfall. The house felt too quiet, too full of memories that now meant nothing. I packed some clothes and essential items, then went to stay in a hotel. I couldn't bear to sleep in the bed I had shared with a man who had been planning my professional murder for months. That night, I sat in my generic hotel room and watched the beginning of my revenge unfold in real time. Rebecca was already trying to access systems using the passwords I had given her. Most of them worked fine. I wasn't ready to tip my hand yet. But I could see her confusion as she tried to navigate programs that were far more complex than anything she had worked with before. She sent Adrian 3 emails that first evening, asking for clarification about various technical procedures. He forwarded them to the IT support team with a note. "Please assist Rebecca with any questions. She's still learning our systems." By the end of the week, Rebecca would be asking a lot more questions. By the end of the month, she would be desperate for help. And by the time they realized what was happening, it would be far too late to stop it. I ordered room service and opened my laptop. Tomorrow I would start building my new life. But tonight I was going to watch Adrian Cole's empire begin its very slow, very public collapse. The woman who had loved and trusted him was gone forever. In her place was someone much more dangerous, someone who understood exactly how to destroy everything he cared about. Let the games begin. I woke up the next morning to 17 missed calls from Adrian and a series of increasingly frantic text messages. The last one, sent at 6:23 a.m., simply said, "Call me now. We need to talk." I made coffee in my hotel room and called him back at exactly 8 a.m., after I was sure he would be stressed and anxious from waiting. "Zara, thank God," he answered on the first ring. "We need to meet. There are some things we need to discuss about the separation." "What kind of things?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the house at noon?" I could hear the tension in his voice, the carefully controlled panic. Something had happened, something that made him need to see me urgently. "I'll be there," I said. When I arrived at what used to be our home, Adrian's car was in the driveway along with a silver BMW I didn't recognize. I used my key to enter and found Adrian in the living room with two men in expensive suits, lawyers from the look of them. "Zara, these are my attorneys," Adrian said without preamble. "We have some papers for you to sign." On the coffee table was a thick stack of documents. I sat down and began reading while the lawyers watched me carefully. It was a comprehensive divorce settlement that would give me essentially nothing. According to the papers, Adrian would keep the house, both cars, all business assets, and our investment portfolio. I would receive a one-time payment of $50,000 and my personal belongings. The document also included a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent me from ever discussing Cole Technologies' business or making any disparaging statements about Adrian or the company. "This is generous, considering your employment was terminated for cause," one of the lawyers said. "Mr. Cole is being very fair." I looked up at Adrian, who was pacing by the windows. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Adrian," I said quietly, "we built that company together. Half of everything we have came from my work." "The company is in my name," he replied coldly. "Your contributions were as an employee, not a partner. These documents reflect legal reality." "What about the house?" "I helped pay for this house. Your contributions were minimal compared to the business profits that funded the purchase." Again, legal reality. I stared at this man who had shared my bed for 8 years, who had promised to love and honor me, who had sworn we were partners in everything. The person standing in front of me was a complete stranger. "I need time to review these documents with my own lawyer," I said. "Actually," the second attorney interjected, "we need your signature today. There are time-sensitive business considerations that make delay inadvisable." Translation: they wanted me to sign before I could get proper legal representation or fully understand what I was giving up. What if I don't sign? Adrian finally looked at me directly, and what I saw in his eyes was pure contempt. "Then we go to court, where you'll lose anyway and you'll end up with even less after paying legal fees. The business is mine, Zara. You were just an employee who happened to be married to the boss." I looked around our living room, the furniture we had picked out together, the artwork we had collected on our anniversaries, the photos from happier times when I thought we were building something permanent together. "You can have the house," I said finally. "And the cars. And the money. But I'm not signing a non-disclosure agreement." "The NDA is non-negotiable," Adrian said firmly. "Sign it or you get nothing at all." I stood up slowly, leaving the unsigned papers on the coffee table. "Then I get nothing at all." As I walked toward the door, Adrian called after me. "You're making a mistake, Zara. Don't be stupid about this." I turned back to face him one last time. Stupid is trusting someone who never deserved it. That evening, I moved my few belongings to a small furnished apartment across town. It was nothing like the luxury I had grown accustomed to, but it was mine. Clean, quiet, and free from memories of betrayal. I spent the weekend setting up my new workspace and continuing to monitor Cole Technologies remotely. Rebecca was already struggling with basic system maintenance, sending confused emails to the IT support team almost hourly. She had managed to crash the customer database twice on Friday alone. Adrian was covering for her, telling employees that she was implementing efficiency improvements that might cause temporary disruptions. But I could see the concern in his messages to board members. Things were not going as smoothly as he had promised. On Sunday night, I received an unexpected visitor. My doorbell rang at 9 p.m., and I opened it to find Rebecca Hayes standing in my hallway. "We need to talk," she said. I let her in, curious to hear what she had to say. She looked tired and stressed, very different from the confident woman who had taken over my office. "I know you hate me," she began. "And I understand why. But I need your help." "My help with what?" "The systems are more complicated than Adrian told me they would be. Some of the documentation you left is unclear. I'm struggling to keep up with everything." I almost laughed. She had stolen my job, my husband, and my life, and now she wanted me to train her how to do the work she had claimed she was already qualified for. "I'm sorry," I said pleasantly, "but Adrian specifically told me there should be no contact with former employees about company business. I wouldn't want to violate his policies." Her confident mask slipped completely. "Please, Zara. I'm drowning over there. I can't ask Adrian for help because he expects me to already know this stuff. I can't ask the other employees because they all hate me for taking your job. You're the only one who understands these systems. Then maybe you shouldn't have taken a job you weren't qualified for." "Look," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. I know this situation is awkward. But Adrian loves me and I love him. We're going to get married. I'm going to be part of this company for a long time. Helping me succeed helps everyone. The audacity was breathtaking. She was asking me to help her succeed at stealing my life. Congratulations on your engagement, I said. When's the wedding? We haven't set a date yet, but soon. Adrian wants to make everything official. I walked to the door and held it open. I think you should leave now. She stared at me for a long moment, maybe hoping I would change my mind. When she realized I wasn't going to help her, her expression hardened. Fine, she said. But you're making an enemy out of someone who could have been an ally. Adrian has a lot of influence in this industry. One word from him could make sure you never work in tech again. Is that a threat? It's reality. Play nice or you'll regret it. After she left, I sat in my small apartment and smiled for the first time in days. Rebecca was already cracking under pressure, and I hadn't even started the real sabotage yet. She had no idea that everything she was struggling with now was just the warm-up act. The main event was still to come. Living in my small apartment, surrounded by boxes and the remnants of my former life, I spent the next week mapping out every detail of Adrian's destruction. I had lost weight, sleeping only a few hours each night, but my mind had never been clearer. Revenge required precision, patience, and perfect planning. I spread printouts across my kitchen table, organizational charts, financial records, client contracts, system architecture diagrams. Everything I needed to understand exactly how to bring down Cole Technologies without leaving any trace back to me. The company had 3 critical vulnerabilities that Adrian had never bothered to secure properly because he trusted me to handle all technical security. First, the client data management system that stored sensitive information for major corporations. Second, the financial processing software that handled millions of dollars in transactions daily. Third, the backup and recovery systems that were supposed to protect everything. I had built all of these systems with hidden administrative access that only I knew about. They were designed to be undetectable and virtually impossible to remove without completely rebuilding everything from scratch, something that would take months and cost millions. But destruction wasn't enough. I wanted Adrian to suffer the way he had made me suffer. I wanted him to lose everything that mattered to him. His money, his reputation, his freedom, and his precious Rebecca. The first phase would target Rebecca directly. I would make her look incompetent and unreliable, turning Adrian's board of directors against her. The second phase would expose Adrian's financial crimes to federal investigators. The third phase would destroy the company's ability to function, driving away clients and investors. By the time I was finished, Cole Technologies would be a smoking crater and Adrian would be in federal prison. I started with Rebecca's email account. She was using the same password for everything, her birthday plus her initials, like an amateur. Within minutes, I had complete access to all her communications. Reading through her messages, I discovered something interesting. Rebecca wasn't just incompetent, she was actively embezzling money from the company. She had been inflating vendor invoices and keeping the difference, skimming from petty cash accounts, and charging personal expenses to the company credit card. It was small-scale theft compared to Adrian's major financial crimes, but it was documented proof that his precious new girlfriend was a criminal. Even better, her sloppy methods meant she had left a clear paper trail that any competent investigator would find easily. I also found messages between Rebecca and her friends where she bragged about landing the rich husband, and described her plans to get rid of his boring wife and take over everything. She had screenshots of our house, our cars, even photos of jewelry that she planned to inherit after the divorce. The woman wasn't just stealing my life, she had been planning it like a military campaign. But the most valuable discovery was in her communications with Adrian. He had been lying to the board about Rebecca's qualifications, forging recommendation letters, and actually having other employees do her work while she took credit. He was so obsessed with this woman that he was committing fraud to make her look competent. I printed everything and organized it into neat files. Phase 1 of my revenge would be anonymously sending all of this evidence to the board of directors, the IRS, and the FBI. Let them sort out how much damage Adrian was willing to accept to protect his criminal girlfriend. Phase 2 required more sophisticated planning. Adrian's major financial crimes were hidden in offshore accounts and shell corporations that I had helped him set up back when I thought we were building a legitimate business together. He had been evading taxes for years, hiding profits, and paying bribes to secure government contracts. The evidence was stored in encrypted files on his personal computer, protected by passwords that only he knew. Except that I had installed monitoring software that recorded every keystroke he made, including those passwords. I spent 3 days copying and organizing 5 years' worth of financial crimes. Tax evasion totaling over $8 million. Bribery of federal officials. Money laundering through fake consulting contracts. Embezzlement from company pension funds. Any one of these crimes would put Adrian in federal prison for years. All of them together would guarantee he spent the rest of his life behind bars. Phase 3 was the most complex because it required destroying Cole Technologies without hurting the innocent employees who still worked there. I didn't want Sarah from accounting or Tony from security to lose their jobs because of Adrian's crimes. So I developed a plan that would gradually drive away the company's major clients while preserving the smaller accounts and individual employees' reputations. The key was making it look like Adrian's leadership was failing, not sabotaging the workers themselves. I identified the 12 largest corporate clients that generated 80% of Cole Technologies' revenue. Each one had specific technical requirements and performance standards that were spelled out in their contracts. If the company failed to meet those standards, the clients could terminate their agreements without penalty. I wrote programs that would cause subtle but critical failures in the services provided to these major clients. Nothing dramatic, just consistent problems that would make the clients lose confidence in the company's reliability. Database queries that ran slightly slower than specified. Security updates that were delayed by just enough to violate contract terms. Backup systems that worked perfectly but generated false error reports. Each client would experience different problems at different times, making it impossible to identify a pattern or single cause. It would just look like Cole Technologies was falling apart under Adrian's leadership. The beauty of this approach was that it would take months to fully destroy the company, giving employees time to find new jobs while systematically dismantling Adrian's empire. By Friday of that week, I had everything ready. 3 phases of revenge that would unfold over the next 6 months, each designed to cause maximum damage to Adrian and Rebecca while protecting everyone else. I sealed the evidence files in multiple envelopes addressed to the FBI, IRS, SEC, and every member of Cole Technologies' board of directors. Then I wrote a detailed letter explaining exactly who Adrian Cole really was and what he had done to his wife, his company, and his investors. The letters would be mailed from different locations over the next month, creating the impression that multiple whistleblowers were coming forward independently. By the time investigators started looking into Adrian's activities, they would find so much evidence that building a case would be effortless. I made myself dinner and ate it slowly, savoring the anticipation of what was coming. Tomorrow, I would mail the first batch of evidence and activate the initial programs that would begin Rebecca's professional downfall. Adrian thought he had won. He thought he had successfully discarded his inconvenient wife and replaced her with a younger, more exciting model. He had no idea that the woman he had betrayed was about to become his worst nightmare. The real game was about to begin and I was playing to win. Monday morning, I mailed the first batch of evidence from a post office across town. 3 packages containing proof of Rebecca's embezzlement and Adrian's fraudulent hiring practices, addressed to different board members. I had timed everything carefully. They would arrive on Wednesday, giving me 2 days to set up the technical side of my revenge. From my apartment, I logged into Cole Technologies' network using my hidden backdoors and began implementing Phase 1. I started small, with subtle problems that would make Rebecca look incompetent without causing major damage to the company. The first target was the Henderson Group presentation that Rebecca was supposed to deliver on Wednesday. It was a $2.3 million contract renewal that should have been routine, but I made sure it would be anything but. I programmed the presentation software to randomly skip slides, display incorrect data charts, and crash at critical moments. To anyone investigating later, it would look like Rebecca had used outdated software or failed to properly test her equipment. Next, I targeted the customer service database that Rebecca was supposed to have updated with new client information. I introduced subtle errors that would cause lookup failures and generate incorrect reports. Again, it would appear to be the result of poor training or carelessness on Rebecca's part. Tuesday afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Zara, it's Patricia from HR. I hope you're doing well." Patricia had always been kind to me, and I could hear the discomfort in her voice. "I'm fine, Patricia. What can I do for you?" "I'm calling because we've had some irregularities in the transition process. Some of the documentation you left for Rebecca seems to have gaps or errors. Would you be willing to consult on a few technical issues?" So it was starting already. Rebecca was failing so badly that they were swallowing their pride and asking for my help. "I'm sorry, Patricia, but Adrian made it very clear that there should be no contact between me and the company. I wouldn't want to violate his policies. Yes, but this is really just a one-time consultation. We could pay you as an independent contractor. Has Adrian approved this? There was a pause. Not exactly. But Rebecca is struggling and we have some important presentations this week. I almost felt sorry for Patricia. She was caught between Adrian's ego and Rebecca's incompetence, trying to prevent a disaster that was going to happen regardless. I understand your situation, Patricia, but I can't help. Adrian was very specific about wanting a clean break. After hanging up, I checked my monitoring programs and saw exactly what was happening. Rebecca had spent Monday trying to prepare for the Henderson presentation, but the technical problems were making it impossible. She had sent increasingly frantic emails to the IT support team, but they couldn't help her because the problems were buried too deep in the system architecture for them to find. Wednesday morning, I watched the disaster unfold in real time through the company's security cameras, which I could access remotely. Rebecca arrived early, looking nervous but determined. She spent an hour testing her presentation equipment, and everything worked perfectly. I had programmed the failures to start only when she was in front of the clients. At 10 a.m., the Henderson Group executives arrived. 5 people in expensive suits who represented one of Cole Technology's most important accounts. Adrian greeted them personally and introduced Rebecca as our new technology leader and the architect of our future success. The presentation started normally. Rebecca looked confident and professional as she began explaining the proposed contract renewal. Then, 15 minutes in, everything began to fall apart. First, the presentation software skipped 3 critical slides, jumping directly from the introduction to the budget summary without showing any of the technical specifications. Rebecca tried to go back, but the software froze completely. "I'm sorry," she said, her confidence already wavering. "Let me restart this." While she rebooted her laptop, I activated the second phase of the sabotage. When she tried to access the client database to show Henderson Group's usage statistics, the system returned error messages claiming that their account could not be found. "That's strange," Rebecca muttered, typing frantically. "The system seems to be having some technical difficulties." One of the Henderson executives checked his watch impatiently. "Ms. Hayes, we only have an hour for this meeting. Perhaps you should have tested your equipment beforehand." "Of course, I did test everything," Rebecca replied, sweat beginning to show on her forehead. "I'm not sure what's causing these problems." Adrian stepped in, trying to salvage the situation. "I apologize for the technical difficulties. Rebecca, why don't you continue with the presentation manually while IT resolves these issues?" But Rebecca had prepared a presentation that relied heavily on data visualizations and technical demonstrations. Without her slides and database access, she was completely lost. She began stumbling through an improvised explanation of services that she clearly didn't understand, using incorrect technical terms and making promises about capabilities that Cole Technologies didn't actually have. The Henderson executives exchanged concerned glances. After 30 minutes of watching Rebecca struggle, the lead executive stood up. "Mr. Cole, we've been working with your company for 3 years, and we've never seen this level of unpreparedness. We'll need to reconsider our contract renewal." They left without signing anything. A $2.3 million deal, lost because Rebecca couldn't deliver a simple presentation. Adrian's face was white with fury as the elevator doors closed behind the Henderson Group. He turned to Rebecca, and I could see him struggling to control his temper in front of the other employees. "My office. Now." Through the building's security system, I watched them argue behind closed doors. Adrian was pacing angrily while Rebecca tried to explain what had happened. She kept insisting that the technical problems weren't her fault, that someone must have sabotaged the systems. She was right, of course, but she had no way to prove it. The argument lasted for over an hour. When Rebecca finally left Adrian's office, she looked shaken and defeated. She went straight to the bathroom, where I watched her cry for 10 minutes before composing herself and returning to work. That afternoon, I received reports from my monitoring programs that Rebecca had sent resume updates to 3 different headhunting firms. She was already looking for an escape route, less than 2 weeks into her new job. But the real fireworks started when the board members received their packages. At 4:47 p.m., Jennifer Walsh called an emergency board meeting for Thursday morning. The subject line of her email was simply, "Urgent personnel matter." Adrian had no idea what was coming. He thought the Henderson Group disaster was just bad luck, that Rebecca would improve with more experience, that everything would work out fine. He was about to learn that his problems were just beginning. Wednesday night, I ordered pizza and watched the security footage from Adrian's office. He was working late, probably trying to figure out how to fix the relationship with Henderson Group. He looked stressed and tired, older than his 35 years. Good. Let him worry. Let him wonder what was going wrong with his perfect plan. Tomorrow, when the board confronted him with evidence of Rebecca's crimes and his own fraudulent hiring practices, the real pain would begin. I was just getting started. Thursday morning arrived with the emergency board meeting that would change everything. I had positioned myself at a coffee shop across from Cole Technologies with a clear view of the building's entrance, watching through binoculars as board members arrived looking grim and determined. Jennifer Walsh was the first to arrive at 7:30 a.m., carrying a thick folder, undoubtedly the evidence package I had mailed her. Robert Chin and Margaret Foster arrived together, both looking serious and speaking in hushed tones. Adrian arrived at 8:45 a.m., clearly unaware that his world was about to collapse. He looked confident, probably thinking this meeting was about damage control for the Henderson Group disaster. Rebecca wasn't with him. She wouldn't be invited to a meeting about her own criminal activities. Through my remote access to the building's conference room cameras, I watched the meeting unfold. Jennifer Walsh called the meeting to order and immediately placed a stack of documents on the conference table. Adrian, we've received some very disturbing information about your recent hiring decisions and the conduct of your new technology director. Adrian's confident expression flickered. What kind of information? Evidence that Rebecca Hayes has been embezzling company funds and that you falsified her employment qualifications to justify her hiring. The color drained from Adrian's face. That's ridiculous. Who would make such accusations? Multiple anonymous sources, Robert Chin replied, opening his own folder. All with detailed documentation and proof. Financial records, forged recommendation letters, email communications discussing the fraud. Margaret Foster leaned forward. Adrian, did you or did you not create fake employment references for Ms. Hayes? I may have enhanced her qualifications slightly, but that's not uncommon in hiring practices. Enhanced. Jennifer's voice was sharp. You invented an entire employment history at a company that doesn't exist. You forged signatures from executives who never heard of her. That's not enhancement, that's fraud. Adrian was sweating now. Even if there were some irregularities in the hiring process, that doesn't justify these attacks on Rebecca. She's learning the job. Learning the job while stealing from the company, Chin said, sliding a financial report across the table. She's embezzled over $47,000 in the past 6 months through fake vendor invoices and personal charges to company accounts. I watched Adrian's face crumble as he realized the scope of what they had discovered. He had been so focused on protecting Rebecca that he hadn't bothered to monitor her actual activities. There must be some mistake, he said weakly. The only mistake was trusting your judgment, Jennifer replied coldly. We're terminating Ms. Hayes immediately and referring her case to law enforcement. We're also conducting a full audit of your hiring and management practices. You can't do that without my approval. I'm the CEO. Actually, according to our corporate bylaws, the board can take emergency action when there's evidence of executive malfeasance. Which there clearly is. The meeting continued for another hour, with Adrian becoming increasingly desperate as the board members presented evidence of his fraudulent activities. They had everything, the forged documents, the embezzlement records, even copies of Rebecca's bragging messages about landing a rich husband. By the end of the meeting, Adrian was facing suspension pending a full investigation, Rebecca was fired and potentially facing criminal charges, and the board had voted to hire an independent auditing firm to examine the company's finances. I packed up my surveillance equipment and drove home, checking my phone for updates from the monitoring software I had installed throughout the building. At 11:23 a.m., Adrian sent Rebecca a frantic text. Emergency. They know everything. Don't come to the office. Her reply came back immediately. What do you mean they know everything? Know what? The embezzlement. The fake references. All of it. You need to get a lawyer. There was a long pause before her next message. This is your fault. You said everything was handled. You said I was safe. We'll figure this out. Just stay calm and don't talk to anyone. Don't tell me to stay calm. My career is ruined because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. Their text conversation continued throughout the day, becoming increasingly hostile as Rebecca realized that Adrian couldn't protect her from the consequences of her actions. By evening, she was threatening to expose his other illegal activities if he didn't find a way to fix the situation. But Adrian had much bigger problems than Rebecca's threats. The board-ordered audit was going to uncover his offshore accounts, his tax evasion, and his embezzlement from company pension funds. The federal investigation was going to destroy him. I had timed the anonymous tips to arrive at different agencies over the next few weeks, creating the impression that multiple whistleblowers were coming forward independently. The FBI would receive their evidence package on Monday. The IRS would get theirs on Wednesday. The SEC would receive theirs the following Monday. Each package contained enough evidence to justify a full investigation, and all of them together would create an overwhelming case against Adrian. He was going to face charges for tax evasion, fraud, embezzlement, bribery, and money laundering. Thursday evening, I treated myself to dinner at an expensive restaurant, the kind of place Adrian used to take me for anniversaries back when I thought our marriage was real. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was celebrating his downfall in the same restaurant where he had proposed 8 years earlier. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know what you're doing." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "I'm having dinner. What are you doing?" "This isn't over, Zara. Adrian will figure out that you're behind this." It had to be Rebecca, probably using a burner phone. I was impressed that she had figured it out so quickly, though it wasn't really surprising. I was the only person with both the motive and the technical skills to orchestrate this kind of systematic destruction. "Behind what?" I replied. "I'm just a divorced woman trying to rebuild her life." "Cut the act. You're sabotaging the company and framing us for crimes. If you're innocent, I'm sure the investigation will clear you." There was no response for several minutes. Then, "You're going to regret this. Adrian has connections. He can make sure you never work again." I almost laughed. Adrian was about to be a federal prisoner, and she was still threatening me with his influence in the tech industry. "Good luck with that," I typed back, then blocked the number. Friday morning brought new developments. Adrian had hired a high-priced criminal defense attorney and was already trying to distance himself from Rebecca's crimes. According to my monitoring software, he had spent Thursday night deleting files and trying to cover his tracks. Unfortunately for him, I had copies of everything he had deleted, and his attempts to destroy evidence would only make him look more guilty when investigators found the digital forensics trail. The board meeting minutes, which I intercepted from Jennifer Walsh's email, showed that Cole Technologies was in serious trouble. The audit was already uncovering financial irregularities, major clients were reconsidering their contracts, and employee morale was at an all-time low. Several key employees had already submitted resignation letters, including Sarah from accounting and 3 senior developers who had worked directly with me. They were smart enough to recognize that the company was sinking and didn't want to go down with it. By the end of the week, Cole Technologies had lost 2 major clients, faced 3 separate government investigations, and seen its stock price drop by 30%. Adrian's empire was crumbling faster than I had expected. But this was still just the beginning. The real destruction would come when the federal agencies started their formal investigations and when my technical sabotage programs moved into their next phase. Adrian thought he was fighting for his business and his freedom. He had no idea that he had already lost both. The woman he had betrayed and discarded was systematically destroying everything he had ever cared about, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Justice was finally coming, and it was going to be beautiful. The following Monday brought exactly what I had been waiting for: FBI agents walking into Cole Technologies with search warrants and boxes for evidence collection. I watched from my usual surveillance position as federal investigators spent 8 hours copying files, interviewing employees, and seizing computer equipment. Adrian's expensive lawyer was there within an hour, but it was too late. The anonymous tips I had sent were so detailed and well documented that the FBI had been able to get warrants for everything: computers, financial records, offshore account information, personal communications. Through my monitoring systems, I watched Adrian pace his office like a caged animal while agents methodically dismantled his digital empire. They copied every file, every email, every financial transaction from the past 5 years. His tax evasion schemes, his bribery payments, his embezzlement from employee pension funds, all of it was now in federal hands. Rebecca had already fled town, according to the GPS tracking on her phone that I had been monitoring. She was in Florida, probably trying to hide assets before the government could freeze them. But she had made the mistake of using her credit cards, creating a perfect trail for investigators to follow. The FBI raid made national news by Tuesday morning. Tech CEO under federal investigation for fraud and embezzlement, read the headline in the business section. The article mentioned that Adrian's wife had recently been terminated from the company amid management restructuring, though it didn't make the connection to the timing of the investigation. By Wednesday, 3 more major clients had terminated their contracts with Cole Technologies. The Anderson Corporation pulled their $4.8 million annual contract. Peterson Industries canceled a $3.2 million software development project. Morrison Financial ended their $2.1 million data management agreement. Each cancellation cited concerns about the stability and reliability of Cole Technologies' leadership as the reason for termination. In reality, they were responding to the technical problems I had been introducing into their systems, subtle failures designed to make them lose confidence in the company's abilities. The beauty of my approach was that each client experienced different problems at different times, making it impossible to identify a pattern. Anderson Corporation's database queries had been running progressively slower for weeks. Peterson Industries had been receiving false security alerts. Morrison Financial's backup systems had been generating fake error reports. None of these problems caused actual data loss or security breaches, but they created the impression that Cole Technologies was becoming unreliable. Combined with the negative publicity from the federal investigation, it was enough to drive away even long-time clients who had previously been satisfied with the company's services. Thursday brought more bad news for Adrian. The IRS arrived with their own search warrants, focusing specifically on his tax records and offshore accounts. I had provided them with detailed information about 8 years of tax evasion, including account numbers, transaction records, and evidence of deliberately underreported income. Adrian's net worth was approximately $40 million, but he had only been reporting income that would justify a lifestyle worth maybe $8 million. The difference was hidden in offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, carefully structured to avoid U.S. tax obligations. The IRS agents spent 3 days at Cole Technologies, going through financial records with forensic accountants. They also raided Adrian's personal home, the house where I had lived and loved and trusted for so many years. I drove by that afternoon and saw government vehicles in the driveway, agents carrying boxes of documents and computer equipment. Our neighbors were standing in their yards, watching the spectacle of Adrian Cole's fall from grace. Mrs. Patterson from next door actually waved to me when she saw my car. She had always liked me better than Adrian anyway. By Friday, the situation had become desperate enough that Adrian was willing to swallow his pride and contact me directly. My phone rang at 6:47 p.m. with a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Zara, please don't hang up." Adrian's voice sounded broken, exhausted. This wasn't the confident billionaire CEO who had fired me 3 weeks earlier. This was a man watching his entire world collapse. "What do you want, Adrian? I know you're behind this. I don't know how, but I know it's you." "Behind what? Your criminal activities?" "I had nothing to do with your decision to evade taxes and embezzle money. The timing is too convenient. The investigation starts right after I let you go. The technical problems that are driving away our clients. The anonymous tips that contain information only you would have access to." He wasn't wrong, but he couldn't prove any of it. I had been too careful, too methodical. Every piece of evidence against him was real. Every technical failure could be explained by legitimate system problems. Every anonymous tip could have come from any number of disgruntled employees or former business partners. "Adrian, you fired me and threw me out of the company I helped build. You divorced me and left me with nothing. Why would I waste my time and energy trying to hurt you when I'm busy rebuilding my own life? Because you're angry. Because you want revenge." "I was angry," I admitted. "But revenge? That would require me to care enough about you to want to cause you pain. I don't. You're just not that important to me anymore." The silence on the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Adrian finally spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Zara. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong. But please, if you have any feelings left for the man you married, don't destroy everything we built together. We didn't build anything together, Adrian. You made that very clear when you fired me. According to you, I was just an employee who happened to be married to the boss. Your words. I was wrong. I was stupid and selfish and wrong. But hundreds of people work for this company. Good people who don't deserve to lose their jobs because of my mistakes. You should have thought about that before you committed federal crimes. Zara, please. Tell me what you want. Money? I'll give you half of everything. The house. It's yours. Just please stop this. I don't want anything from you, Adrian. I never did. All I ever wanted was for you to love me and be faithful to me and treat me like an equal partner. But you couldn't do that, could you? I can change. We can fix this." "No, we can't. And I wouldn't want to even if we could." I hung up and turned off my phone. Adrian had finally realized that he was fighting for his life, but it was far too late. The federal investigations were already underway, the company was hemorrhaging clients and employees, and his reputation was permanently destroyed. Over the weekend, I implemented the final phase of my technical sabotage. Instead of subtle problems designed to drive away clients gradually, I unleashed programs that would cause immediate and catastrophic system failures. On Monday morning, Cole Technologies would experience the kind of complete digital meltdown that would make recovery impossible. Every major system would crash simultaneously, all backup systems would fail, and months of work would be lost forever. It would look like a combination of hardware failures and cyber attacks from external sources. No one would ever be able to prove that the destruction came from inside the company's own infrastructure. Adrian had betrayed me, divorced me, and tried to erase me from the company I had helped create. He had called me dead weight and claimed that my contributions were merely adequate. On Monday morning, he would learn exactly what my contributions had been worth. The empire I had built was about to become the weapon I used to destroy the man who had never deserved it. Monday morning arrived with the digital apocalypse I had been planning for weeks. At exactly 9 a.m., every critical system at Cole Technologies crashed simultaneously. The customer database corrupted itself, the financial processing software locked up completely, and the backup systems failed to restore anything. I watched the chaos unfold through the building's security cameras from my apartment, eating breakfast while Adrian's world burned. Employees were running between offices, phones were ringing constantly, and IT support staff were pulling their hair out trying to understand what was happening. Adrian arrived at 8:30 a.m. to find his building in complete pandemonium. The elevators weren't working properly, the electronic key card system was malfunctioning, and even the coffee machines were displaying error messages. By 10 a.m., every major client had been affected. The Morrison financial payroll system had crashed during processing, leaving thousands of employees without paychecks. The Anderson Corporation's inventory management system had wiped 6 months of data. Peterson Industries' customer service platform was completely inaccessible. The phones were ringing constantly with angry clients demanding explanations and threatening lawsuits. Adrian held an emergency meeting with his remaining senior staff, but none of them could explain what was happening or how to fix it. Through my monitoring software, I could see the increasingly desperate emails Adrian was sending to every IT consultant and recovery specialist in the city. But the problems were too deep, too fundamental. I had designed the failures to cascade through every interconnected system, creating a digital house of cards that collapsed completely once the first piece fell. By noon, the story had leaked to the press. Cole Technologies suffers massive system failure amid federal investigation, was the headline on the local business website. The article speculated that the company might be the victim of a cyber attack, possibly related to the ongoing criminal investigation. Adrian's lawyer issued a statement claiming that the system failures were clearly the result of malicious outside interference, and demanded a federal investigation into potential cyber terrorism. It was a desperate attempt to shift blame away from his client's own criminal activities. But I had been too careful for that approach to work. Every piece of malicious code I had planted was designed to look like legitimate system maintenance or natural hardware failures. Digital forensics experts would find evidence of system degradation over time, not sudden sabotage. Tuesday brought even worse news. The SEC had opened a formal investigation into Cole Technologies' financial reporting, focusing specifically on Adrian's use of offshore accounts to hide company profits. The agency had received detailed anonymous tips about securities fraud and investor deception. 3 more clients canceled their contracts, citing the system failures and concerns about the company's viability. Cole Technologies was now operating with less than 30% of its previous revenue stream. Employee resignations were accelerating. Sarah from accounting had already found a new job. Tony from security was interviewing with other firms. Even Adrian's personal assistant, who had worked with him for 4 years, submitted her 2 weeks' notice. Wednesday brought the moment I had been waiting for. Federal agents arrested Rebecca Hayes at her Florida hotel, charging her with embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. Her mugshot appeared on news websites by evening, blonde hair disheveled, makeup smeared, looking nothing like the confident woman who had stolen my job. According to the arrest report, Rebecca had been caught trying to transfer money from hidden accounts to offshore banks. She had also been recorded by federal wiretaps discussing plans to flee the country with stolen company funds. The arrest warrant included charges that surprised even me. Apparently, Rebecca had been embezzling money not just from Cole Technologies, but from 2 previous employers as well. She was a career criminal who had targeted wealthy executives for years, using romantic relationships to gain access to company resources. Adrian wasn't her first married victim. She had a pattern of seducing married businessmen, getting herself hired at their companies, stealing money, and disappearing when the relationships ended. The FBI had been tracking her activities across multiple states for over 2 years. The revelation that his precious Rebecca was a professional con artist hit Adrian harder than all the financial and legal problems combined. According to my email monitoring, he spent Wednesday night drinking alone in his office, sending rambling messages to his lawyer about how he had been manipulated and deceived. Thursday morning brought the final blow. Federal agents arrested Adrian at his home on charges of tax evasion, wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. The arrest warrant detailed 8 years of criminal activity totaling over $12 million in stolen funds and unpaid taxes. I watched the news coverage from my small apartment, finally allowing myself to feel satisfaction as Adrian was led away in handcuffs. The confident CEO who had called me dead weight was now facing 30 years in federal prison. The news report mentioned that Adrian's wife had been previously terminated from the company amid management changes, but didn't make the connection between my firing and the subsequent investigation. To the outside world, I was just another casualty of Adrian's poor business decisions. Cole Technologies officially declared bankruptcy on Friday morning. The combination of criminal investigations, client departures, and system failures had made the company financially unviable. Over 200 employees would lose their jobs, though most of them had already found new positions elsewhere. The bankruptcy filing included a detailed inventory of company assets, which would be sold to pay creditors and legal fees. Adrian's personal assets had been frozen by federal authorities, including the house where we had lived together and all of his luxury cars. Friday afternoon, I received a call from Jennifer Walsh, the board member who had led the investigation into Rebecca's crimes. "Zara, I wanted to reach out and apologize. The board realizes now that your termination was completely unjustified. Adrian's actions were motivated by his personal relationship with Ms. Hayes, not by any legitimate business concerns. I appreciate you saying that, Jennifer. We're all deeply sorry that you got caught up in this situation. If there's anything we can do to help with your career transition, please let us know. Thank you, but I'm doing fine. I've actually started my own consulting firm." "That's wonderful. I'd love to discuss some potential projects with you when things settle down." After hanging up, I walked to my window and looked out at the city where I had spent 8 years building someone else's dream. Adrian's empire was gone, reduced to bankruptcy paperwork and federal criminal charges. Rebecca was in jail awaiting trial. The company that had fired me no longer existed. But I was still here. Still standing. Still moving forward. Saturday morning, I received one final message from Adrian. He had somehow gained access to a phone in federal custody and sent me a single text. "I know it was you." I replied, "Good luck proving it." Then I blocked his number and deleted our entire conversation history. Adrian Cole was no longer my problem. He was the federal government's problem now. Sunday evening, I sat in my small apartment reviewing job offers from 3 different companies and 2 consulting opportunities. My reputation in the tech industry hadn't been damaged by Adrian's downfall. If anything, people seemed to view me as another victim of his criminal behavior. I had emerged from the wreckage of my marriage and career with my professional integrity intact, my technical skills in high demand, and a growing bank account from my consulting work. Adrian, meanwhile, was facing decades in prison, complete financial ruin, and the knowledge that the woman he had betrayed was now thriving without him. Justice had been served, and it was more satisfying than I had ever imagined. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of my new company, Zara Thompson Cybersecurity Solutions, looking out at the team of 12 brilliant engineers I had assembled from the wreckage of Cole Technologies. Sarah from accounting had joined as my CFO. Tony from security was now my head of physical security operations. 3 of Adrian's best developers had signed exclusive contracts with my firm. We had just closed our biggest deal yet, a $3.2 million contract with Morrison Financial to rebuild their entire data management infrastructure. The same company that had lost millions when Cole Technology systems crashed was now paying me to fix the problems I had created. The irony was perfect. The Morrison contract puts us at $8.7 million in signed business for our first 6 months, Sarah announced to the team. We're officially profitable and ahead of all projections. Applause filled the room. These people had lost everything when Adrian's empire collapsed, but they had landed on their feet with better jobs, better pay, and equity stakes in a company that actually valued their contributions. I had kept my promise to protect the innocent employees who had suffered because of Adrian's crimes. Every person who had worked directly with me at Cole Technologies had received job offers from my new company or recommendations to other firms. None of them had been unemployed for more than 2 weeks. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Cole Technologies CEO Adrian Cole sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. The accompanying article detailed his conviction on all charges: tax evasion, wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. The judge had called his crimes a betrayal of the employees and investors who trusted him to act with integrity. Rebecca Hayes had been sentenced to 8 years in prison after pleading guilty to embezzlement and fraud charges spanning multiple companies. The article mentioned that she was also facing charges in 3 other states for similar crimes against other executives. Adrian's sentencing hearing had been closed to the public, but according to court records, he had attempted to claim that he was the victim of a sophisticated sabotage campaign by a disgruntled former employee. The judge had dismissed these claims as desperate attempts to avoid responsibility for his own criminal actions. I forwarded the news article to my team with a note: "Justice served. Now let's get back to building something better." That evening, I drove to the Harbor restaurant where Adrian and I had celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary. It seemed appropriate to close this chapter of my life in a place that held memories of happier times. I ordered the same wine we had shared that night, a bottle of Caymus Cabernet that cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month. Back then, I had felt guilty about the expense. Now I could afford it easily. My phone rang as I was finishing dinner. The caller ID showed a number I recognized: Adrian's mother, calling from the federal prison where she had been visiting her son. "Zara, I hope you don't mind me calling. Adrian gave me your number." Mrs. Cole had always been kind to me, and I could hear the pain in her voice. "Of course not, Mrs. Cole. How are you holding up?" "Not well, as you might imagine. I visited Adrian today and he's not doing well in prison. He keeps saying that someone destroyed his company deliberately, that he didn't do anything worse than any other businessman. I'm sorry he's having a difficult time, but he did commit serious crimes." "I know that. I'm not defending what he did. But Zara, he keeps mentioning you. He seems to think that you were involved in exposing his illegal activities." I took a sip of wine and watched the sunset over the harbor. "Mrs. Cole, I was fired from that company and divorced by your son. I had no access to company information and no ability to influence any government investigations." That's what I told him. "But he's convinced that you somehow orchestrated his downfall. He talks about it constantly." Adrian needs to accept responsibility for his own actions. Blaming other people isn't going to help him adjust to prison or rebuild his life when he gets out. "You're right, of course. I wanted to ask if you could visit him. Maybe if you talk to him, he could find some peace and move forward." The request was so absurd that I almost laughed. Adrian wanted me to visit him in prison so he could continue trying to blame me for consequences of his own crimes. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cole, but I don't think that would be helpful for anyone. Adrian and I are divorced. We have no relationship anymore." "I understand. I just thought, well, you loved him once." "I did love him. But the man I loved never existed. The real Adrian Cole is exactly where he belongs." After ending the call, I sat in my car for a few minutes, processing the conversation. Adrian was spending his days in federal prison obsessing over me, trying to convince himself and anyone who would listen that I was responsible for his downfall. In a way, he was right. I had gathered the evidence of his crimes, provided it to federal investigators, and systematically destroyed his company through technical sabotage. But the crimes themselves, the tax evasion and embezzlement and fraud, those were entirely his choice. I had simply made sure he faced consequences for actions he had already taken. A year later, I was featured on the cover of Tech Entrepreneur magazine as Cybersecurity Executive of the Year. The article described how I had built a successful company from nothing, assembled a world-class team, and earned the trust of major corporations across 3 industries. There was one paragraph about my previous employment at Cole Technologies, describing me as another victim of the company's criminal leadership, who had risen above adversity to build something better. The journalist had asked about Adrian during our interview, wondering if I felt vindicated by his conviction and imprisonment. I had simply said that I didn't spend time thinking about the past, I was too busy building the future. Which was true. Adrian Cole was no longer part of my life in any meaningful way. He was just a cautionary tale about what happens when people mistake power for wisdom and cruelty for strength. I kept the magazine cover in my office, not as a symbol of revenge, but as a reminder of what was possible when you refused to let other people define your worth. 2 years later, Sarah knocked on my office door with a bottle of champagne and a huge smile. "We just signed the Peterson Industries contract. $18 million over 3 years. Peterson Industries, another former Cole Technologies client that was now paying my company to provide the services Adrian's firm had failed to deliver. We were literally profiting from his mistakes while providing better service at competitive prices. That puts us at $43 million in annual revenue, Sarah continued. We're officially one of the fastest growing cybersecurity firms in the country. That evening, I treated my entire team to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city. 47 people who had built something extraordinary together, who had turned professional catastrophe into personal triumph. During the toasts, I thought about Adrian sitting in his prison cell, probably still convinced that his downfall was someone else's fault. He would be eligible for parole in 18 years, assuming good behavior. By then he would be in his 50s, his prime earning years gone, his reputation permanently destroyed. Meanwhile, I would be running a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars, employing thousands of people, and protecting businesses from the kinds of threats Adrian had never understood. I raised my glass to the team that had helped me build this new life. To second chances, I said. And to proving that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. The story of my marriage to Adrian Cole had ended in betrayal and divorce. But my story, the story of Zara Thompson, entrepreneur and cybersecurity expert, was just beginning. And it was going to be magnificent.